Welcome to Season 7 of True Blue Conversations with your host, Adam Bloom. Real talk with those who pledge to keep us safe with grit, sacrifice and determination. Let's get on with the show. This episode of True Blue Conversations is proudly brought to you by Loudon Private Wealth, the team trusted by professionals, veterans and families across Australia to build real long-term financial security. If you want to take control of your finances, protect your future and build real generational wealth, Loudon Private Wealth are the people you want in your corner. They don't do gimmicks, they don't do hype, just smart strategy and honest advice, coupled with real-world experience. Check out the links in the description to contact Warren and the team via loudonpw.com.au or 02 8313 0418. Now let's get back to the show. This episode of True Blue Conversations was brought to you by Dead Reckoning Rum, creating individual rum releases commemorating the diggers lost in Afghanistan, proudly supporting veterans, donating 50% of all their profits to veterans organisations around Australia. Look up Dead Reckoning Rum, buy some bottles, connect via Instagram and Facebook and give them your support. Now, let's get back to the show.
G'day, welcome back to True Blue. Today I have a very special guest on, a friend of mine. We've been friends for a long time now, and we did catch up in person and record her podcast before, but unfortunately I actually flew over to Perth and the file actually went corrupted, so we're actually catching back up again to record again. So my bad on that one, Meg. So I apologise, and but we've got there. So we've been planning this for a little while, and it's great to get her back on and have a chat. So today I'm joined by Meg Jarvis. She spent 8 years in the Western Australian Police and started off in general duties, and then went down the detective side and spent a bit of time in the detectives, and then unfortunately through the trauma that she saw in her career, she actually had to leave the job that she loved and had to find purpose again, which she has now, and so it's an absolute honour to have her back on. So Meg Jarvis, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Again.
So we got there, yeah, I know, we got there again. So as I said to you, my bad, but it's great to get you back on. So Meg, before we get into your policing career, let's go back to a young Meg. Talk me about growing up and what life was like, what were you like at school, your hobbies, and do you have any brothers and sisters, and did you play any sport?
Sure. I grew up in South Africa and Botswana, actually. I lived in South Africa for about 2.5, 3 years, and then we moved to Botswana when I was 3. And life was different. It was very much skateboarding in the road and riding our bikes and exploring, very much outdoors type of childhood. And I had a very loving family. I've got a brother, a real brother. And then I've got step brother and sister as well. So that's when I say real brother. That's what I mean by that. I should probably be a little bit more formal and say like biological.
Yeah.
Anyway. So my brother and I grew up with very loving family in Botswana, which was obviously, a little bit harder as a place to live than what it is here in Australia, but albeit very grateful. And I was a dancer, and I played tennis and I swam. I did a lot of sport as a little child, and carried on when we immigrated to Australia.
And what were you like at schooling, and did you, like, growing up in Botswana, were you over there, like your mum and dad working over there, or how did you end up in Botswana?
Yeah, Dad, I think my dad got a job over in Botswana, so they left South Africa to go there for work. School, yeah, look, from my memory, it was good. However, I did experience a few things in my childhood which unfortunately left me with really bad anxiety. So I do think that a part of myself has blocked some of schooling off. And unfortunately, I do remember some harder times as a child in school in Botswana. However, for the most part, schooling was good. It was a lot different to Australian schooling. It was a lot more strict. There was a lot more respect. Oh, can I say that?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, definitely.
There's a lot more respect. I love Australia, by the way. But yeah, it was just a African country, like, harder, and we're nowhere near as blessed as what we are here in Australia, that's for sure.
Do you think because you were the odd one out, is that why you think it was so different?
But in Botswana?
Yeah, in Botswana.
No, not necessarily. I mean, I always struggled with confidence in terms of being an odd one out. I suppose in a group of friends setting, and that might have come through as feeling like an odd one out. But in terms of generically being an odd one out, there it's not. Yeah, it's very much the same. You're not different for being from South Africa or from, like, most people were living in Botswana, had come from other places. So I technically wasn't an odd one out, but I probably put myself as an odd one out.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And so you come to Australia, and how old were you when you actually came to Australia?
13.
Yeah, right. So what was that like, especially coming from Botswana to then coming to Australia? Did you find that transition hard when you first came over here?
Oh, it was hard, like one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. I'm 13 with an accent, no friends. I started high school here, so most of the people who were transitioning to high school were transitioning with primary school friends, and so going into high school I was very lonely, very isolated. I was teased a lot for having an accent, and for being different, obviously. It was really difficult. My parents also separated a year after we moved here, so that happened very quickly whilst we were still trying to adjust and find our feet and all of those things. So it was a really hard time.
Australians can be very cruel, and and even me being an Australian, I copped it, as you've seen, and you and I have caught up. Being a redhead, I copped it terribly, and so Australians can be cruel, and especially with people that are different and speak differently. That would have been tough, and so you come to Australia, and then where did the idea of policing come from? Because you was that always there from a young age, or did that come later on?
It came later on, and I don't actually, I try and think back now as to when that became a thing. I don't know. I don't know when or how or what. I just had this overwhelming kind of sense of I need to do this, and I need to be a police officer. It was just something that all of a sudden I was very passionate about and really wanted really badly. And I think it was when I was 18, I just turned 18, and I put an application in for the police in WA, and I didn't get in that first time at 18, and it absolutely rocked my world. Like, that's how much I wanted to be a police officer. But where it came from, I couldn't even tell you.
So do you have any family history that have been police officers or gone down the military side of things, or are you the first?
No to policing. However, in South Africa, I don't know so much now, but back in the day, all men had to go through the army. So my dad would have gone through. He got unwell though, I think, so he didn't complete it, but he did some military time. And then in terms of other family, no, but my mum is a nurse and has always been a nurse and was a trauma nurse in South Africa. So she worked in the emergency departments in South Africa, so she would have seen gunshots, wounds, and everything, obviously. So I would say my desire to help people would have come from probably mum.
Yeah, right. And so you go to join at 18 and then you're rejected, and which, looking back now, and and we're going to get into the trauma side of policing a little bit later on in the podcast. Looking back now, do you actually think that's a blessing?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, without a doubt. I truly, as you know now, I truly believe that everything happens for us and for a reason, even when it's a shit time. But yeah, I 100% am grateful that I didn't get in at 18, because I really think that I needed to learn and experience a lot more of what life has to offer before entering that world. And yeah, I actually hate to think how I would have handled a lot of stuff had I not had some experience. And I think it also made me a better copper, because I had more to kind of understand and go back to and refer to. And yeah, it would have definitely made me a better copper.
It's funny. I was actually catching up. I caught up with a couple of mates who were ex-police last weekend, and we're all talking about it's fun, like we're talking about young ones joining today, and that joining at 18, 19, and we all said that they actually should raise the age to 25. We actually believe that you should go away, get some life experience, and I say this, and you know me, Meg, I have the utmost respect for police officers, but I look at 18 and 19-year-olds, and if I'm in a situation, I'm not going to be listening to them, because they've got no life experience. Like and it's no fault of their own. It's just that, how can they compare to, say, a 35-year-old when they're 19? Like, there's no comparison. As at least when you're 25, you've got a little bit of life experience that you can use. And yeah, like, it was interesting that we had that discussion, and you joined at 25.
Yes. Yeah, I did. Yeah.
So it's funny, isn't it? Like, and so we're all in agreement that we think the age should be raised to 25, and because, as the first responder space, you're going into life and death situations. You are faced with trauma, and I say this as well. If you're younger, like, once you see something, you can't unsee it. It's there forever. So and it it with the work you do now, and we're going to get into that later on. And that's so, when you had that rejection, you had to overcome that adversity. What did you do in those few years before you joined? Like, did you just go and get life experience?
Oh, I got some life experience. Like, how much on you? How much do I say? That's going to be heard by who I don't even know who. Yeah, look, I got some experience. I partied very hard.
As we all did.
Yeah, I made some fucking ridiculous choices in my life. Put myself in situations that I question today, but I also learnt a lot in those very average choices. So it definitely needed to happen, and I learnt a lot about myself, a lot about life. Obviously, I was still only in my early 20s, so I hadn't quite learnt what I have today, obviously. But yeah, I traveled a little bit, dated some fucking average human beings. Yeah, partied, did the same thing, rinse, repeat. Repeated my same behaviours and patterns for a while until I was like, all right, enough's enough. Like,
hey, look. Yeah. We've all been there. Trust me. I wrote a book and a chapter on it. So, partying and spending $6,000 in a night. So that's what you do when you're in your 20s, isn't it? That's right.
Yeah. No, look, I just had a good time. That's it.
Yeah. And so you join you join it at 25, so that urge like still is there. You've gone to do, like you've had that rejection at 18, but you still want to serve. And did you think, oh, I might try, being a fiery, or I might try an ambo, or was it still always the police that was where you wanted, that was where your heart was set?
Yeah, it was always police. In those years that I was obviously just taking the mickey out of it a little bit, I was working in a gym, and I'd started studying my certificates in fitness to be a PT. So I did go down the fitness side, and thought that maybe I would do that instead, but my heart was always strongly set on policing. So I was in the gym and then was like, no, I still need to do policing. And so I did. So yeah, looking back, God, I wish I'd had actually considered the fireys, to be honest with you. It's something that I still sit there today and go, oh, could I give it a crack now? But no, policing was, it's what I wanted to do. And I'd always wanted to go down the detective path as well. So that's why.
It's funny. Most first responders I speak to now go, yeah, I don't know, maybe I should have joined the military, or maybe I should have, would have been looked after better. Like would have, at least, instead of, you leave as a police officer or first responder, and there's nothing at the end, but just a broken body. But
some PTSD and some broken bodies, and see ya, bye, thanks for nothing.
Thanks for nothing, see you later. And at least in the military, here we'll give you, and I'm taking the mickey, we'll give you, we'll give you everything. But no, the military and the veterans deserve everything that they get, and hopefully one day first responders will actually get there too. Let's hope so. And so you join. You joined in 2015, and talk me through the process in 2015. Back then, joining the WA Police, was it you just go through the standard? Because you and I grew up with internet, so did you jump online and do your application, or talk me through that?
Yeah, I think I did a handwritten one. Yeah, I did. I did a handwritten one, and I handed it in.
Wow!
A big yellow envelope.
Yeah, right.
Envelope, and I filled it in, and I gave it to the police. I'm pretty sure. I definitely did when I was 18, handwritten one. Pretty sure when I actually got in, it was handwritten as well, because I remember I used to live with a friend of mine, Claire. She's beautiful. We had so much fun. Anyway, besides the point, I remember me one day, and she was like, "Go and get that yellow envelope from the top of your cupboard and fill it out and reapply." And that's what pushed me to reapply for the police again. I was so fearful of failure again and not getting in again that I think I put it off for so long. And then I remember her pushing me, so I'm pretty handwritten.
And so with the fitness side of things, because you'd been at the gym, you're obviously fit, and I've seen you that you've maintained your fitness right through police, and I mean you've just had a beautiful baby, and you're glowing, so you still kept your fitness up. Yeah, you have, and because the last time we spoke, you were actually pregnant, so
I was.
So and you weren't far away from having the little one, so you've maintained. So fitness was good, did you? Obviously you had to go through your testing and all that sort of thing, and then you're accepted. And what was that like because as you said, you feared failure, you were thinking, you doubted yourself. What was it like to say, Meg, congratulations, you've been accepted into the WA Police?
I was the best day. Like I was elated, like just complete. It was like a sense of achievement, of excitement, a bit of fear in there, but just like oh my God, like what is this experience about to give me? What do I get to do now, and and it was this constant, like the whole process takes a very, very long time. The one assessment, and then you wait and you wait and you wait. Yep, you've passed that one. Okay, next one. And you wait and you wait and you wait. And I think the physical, I failed the agility the first time, and I passed everything else. And so I had to redo it, and then I passed it, obviously, the second time. And then you wait for the next letter, and so it takes like a very, very long time from start to finish. So when I got that final letter of like, yeah, you've been accepted, basically you start on this date, it was just one of the best feelings in the world. And I just still remember feeling, it almost felt like it gives you almost a sense of purpose as well. Even though you haven't even become a police officer yet, you're like, wow, I'm about to do something that has purpose and has meaning. And that's a pretty cool feeling.
It is, and you're protecting, the civilians, like citizens who can't, on their worst day, who are they calling? They're calling the police, fire, or ambulance. That's who they're calling. So you get to protect and serve the people, which it's I like you, especially being a fiery. It's the best job in the world, honestly. Like, it is the best job because you're seeing people at their worst, and you actually get to make a difference and restore some normality. Obviously, some of the crimes that you dealt with, they're never ever going to be restored to normality again. But in that moment, you're there for them, and so yeah, I understand it. I get it. It's massive pride, and so you get to the academy. And are you guys like New South Wales, where you actually stay at the academy, or could you go home? Or talk me through that.
Yes, so you go home, you kind of attend like a normal work day in the mornings, and then you'd go through your academy training during the day and then go home. If you were regional WA, you could stay on site, and then, so that you've obviously got somewhere to live. But if you were in the metro, then, you would just drive in and drive out like you would any other job, I suppose.
And are you guys over there in WA, do you guys get paid? Because I know New South Wales have only just brought back in that, so they did 9 months where you didn't get paid. So it was literally, you'd go for 9 months, no pay, and they've only just brought that back in that they get paid. So it's like, you were paid?
Yeah, we were.
Yeah, right. And how long's your training?
6 months.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, right. And I'm guessing, was it a struggle with like learning the laws, or did that fascinate you in like the laws and learning that? And, was there anything that you struggled with?
I loved that side of it. I loved legislation. I still love legislation to this day. I just, a bit of a weirdo like that. I'm like, ooh, this bit means that, and then this bit means that. Like, I don't know. I really enjoyed the legislation side of things. And yes, learning how to read legislation. The one thing that I struggled with was the OSTU training. So your like tactical training, weapons and stuff. Like, I loved shooting. I loved doing that, but the very high, intense adrenaline / unknown potential outcome scenarios that we were put in, I found very anxiety provoking. And I think for me, having been someone who'd always had anxiety, then being in a very high, what's the word? Like high level stimulation surrounding, with where we'd be put in scenarios of someone running at you or attacking you, and you had to kind of like react. And being yelled at constantly and stuff like that. It was, I really struggled some days with that. And it would just be because my anxiety would peak. And I at that point in my life, I didn't understand anxiety and I didn't know how to manage it. But that being said, because it was a training and it was part of the training, it didn't overwhelm me or anything like that. I just felt that if there was one thing that I found most difficult, it would probably be those situations where,
and what people, the civilian listener, because I've interviewed a lot of you guys now, is that you can go from 0 to 100 and go from escalation to de-escalation very quickly, and you've got a matter of seconds to de-escalate a violent situation, and and you've got to turn aggression on and turn it off, and that's a hard thing to do. And especially being, as you said, struggling with anxiety, that in your face, no one loves someone in their face yelling at them, and trying to de-escalate a situation is very hard. So yeah, I can understand it would be very hard. And so you struggled with that part, and you enjoyed the shooting part, and so you finish your time and then you march out, and that would have been a proud moment. Did you get your family down to see you march out?
Yeah, they were all there. Very special day.
Yeah, and what class were you? Do you remember your class that you went through, or did you guys have squads, or?
Yeah, we did. We were white squad of 25. Was it when? But we graduated in March of 26. Sorry, 26. Next year we graduated, apparently. You tell I've had a baby.
I can't, yeah, so 20, I know what you meant, 2016.
That's the one.
Yeah, 2016.
Thank
So,
you.
no, that's all right. I'll save you. All good. And I'll just say that every mum goes through it, so it's okay. So, and so.
I've had me trying to explain the situation before in Austria. I'm like, highly stimulated. Can't think of the word, but I was very anxious.
You got it.
Thanks
Yeah.
for that.
No worries. So, and do you get a choice, like a preference to where you want to go? Like, did you want to go regional? Did you want to stay in Perth itself? Or where did you end up?
I didn't get a choice straight out of the academy in terms of metro. I think if you wanted to go regional, you could put in for that. But I obviously wanted to stay metro at the time. So I got booze bus first, which was for the first 6 months. Look, it was shit. Didn't enjoy it. But at the end of the day, it also taught me basic skills of policing. So it served its purpose. So initially was booze bus, and then I went to Mirrabooka Response, which they've changed the way that they do it. To be honest, I wouldn't even know right now what it is, but at the time it was called Response, which would be you would be responding to incidents as opposed to being a bit more proactive. So you're reactive versus proactive, pretty much, is the easiest way to explain that.
So did you feel ready, like when you graduated, did you feel ready to go out into the dangerous world of policing from what you'd been taught at the academy? Or is the academy like it's a base, and then getting out into the real world it's another step up? And did you feel ready?
Fuck no. No way. No, it's putting on a brave face and just going, let's just hope for the best here.
Let's fake it till we make it.
Pretty much, yep. Yeah, it's daunting, and I think that's when I say that the booze bus served a purpose. That's what I mean. It's as much as it's not all the exciting bells and whistles. It is a way to learn how to search cars and learn how to have conversations with people and things like that. So. But no, I was absolutely not feeling ready.
And so, do you remember your first death, and how did you deal with that? And was there support back then when you actually, or did that not exist? And did it get any better as you went on in your policing career?
It's not funny, but it's funny. Look. The reason I'm laughing is the support question. But my first death was, funnily enough, out of the booze bus. When I first got Mirrabooka, my first job was a house fire, and the woman in this house died in her house trying to get out, which was horrific. And when they finally managed to pull her out of the house, they had her on the stretcher with the machine that gives CPR. I can't remember the name of it now, but that is brutal. as I'm sure you've seen, and yeah, she ultimately died. And so I guess, funnily enough, being my first job ever, was a death involved, but I suppose I didn't deal with her at the time. So there was that, and then my first actual death. Funnily enough, actually, I was thinking about this driving down the freeway the other day. It's funny how policing will just always stay with you. I was driving down the freeway going northbound, and I was like, oh yeah. I remember it was way out of our patch, like completely out of our patch, and there was no one available in their patch to deal with it. So my partner and I got priority to go. And I remember driving there and getting there, and it was a hanging, very, very young girl. And it was horrible. Like the mum was there, and she was obviously distraught. It was a really difficult job, and my first one at that as well. And look, I do remember it. I'll never forget it. And I think at the time you just go, someone's got to do it. It's a job. Like, we just got, what do we need to do? And then it's almost just like ticking the boxes of, like, you know, how to deal with the job itself. Support wise is, unfortunately, this probably the same. I don't know, but it used to be a little leaflet thing that they would send you on with some numbers to call if you need support, and then an email. If you need help, here's some numbers, call. And from the moment I started policing until the moment I finished policing, it was the same. I think when I left the job, I went to a critical incident and I got a phone call. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Either a pamphlet, a phone call, an email to say, are you okay? We're here if you need.
Yeah, it sounds like it hasn't changed, and pretty much every police officer I've ever had on, same thing. It just never changes, and death knocks and giving the death notice, it's shit,
Yeah.
and it's never good, and so yeah, it's just a shit part of the job. And did you find too that once you started getting into like the general duty side of things, that your perception of the world changed, and it was black and white? They were either a criminal or they were, they were a good Samaritan. Like, did you find that?
No, and that's actually why I struggled with policing. I really struggled to look at people as just, criminals. I always was intrigued as to why they would make choices that they made, why they were on drugs, why they resorted to physical harm of themselves or of other people. Obviously, that's context. That comes with context as well. I can't say that I looked at pedophiles and was like, had an inch of sympathy. However, I still was very curious as to their psychology, regardless of the fact that I definitely looked at them as a criminal. But yeah, I was kind of the police officer that wanted to question the druggies and be like, what got you here? Like, why are you on drugs? And I always used to be confronted with other coppers being like, oh, they're just a shithead. They're a piece of shit. And I struggled with that because I was like, they're still a human. And maybe that's just my empath side of me.
I get it though, because like some people, it's family circumstances, it's their upbringing, or that's led them into that. And you're right, like some of your colleagues are right that some of them are pieces of shit, and pedophiles are one that are
That's
just
right.
pieces of shit. Like there are genuine hard criminals that
Oh, yeah.
you do, but there are people that circumstances have got them to that point, and I understand that. I get the empathy side. And do you remember your first arrest?
I don't.
It's funny that
I really don't.
Did you have some interesting, funny arrests that you can remember?
Oh yeah, yeah. So many, so many. I just yeah. There was one. Oh, if I wish my colleague was here with me just to relive this for a moment. But yeah, there was a bloke swinging from goalposts at like lunchtime, butt naked, in a park one day, and he was just like off it, like yeah. Like I know it's funny for us, but it's
Yeah, yeah.
some people are probably like, yeah, that's not really that funny, Meg. Like he's off his head. It's not funny, but when you are in the moment and you're finding light in dark places,
Black humor.
yeah, it is funny. But some of the arrests, yeah, were hilarious, and some of the jobs were hilarious. Yeah, I do
It's
remember some good ones.
it's funny because like as well as I do that black humor gets us through, and so I'm guessing he would have been arrested for indecent exposure. Is that yeah? being yeah.
We had to take him to hospital for mental health assessments actually, and he was having a full drug psychosis.
Yeah.
Ultimately, so that's why he probably stripped down and stuff. But yeah, in the back there, he's in the back of the paddy wagon doing very inappropriate things because he managed to get his handcuffs around it to his front, and it was just
Yeah, right. And so what was your day-to-day policing like? So were you going to like you going to home invasions, you going to DVs, like what were you involved in day-to-day policing?
yeah, everything. So especially with being like a first responder initially, so everything from domestics, homicides, suicides, sudden deaths, robberies, car accidents, sex assaults, yeah, like everything pretty much. And then obviously as my career developed and as I ended up in the detective space, then I would step deeper into like the more serious offences. But yeah, in terms of day-to-day policing as a first responder, everything.
So did you move around, obviously once you got away from the booze bust, did you actually go regional or did you pretty much stay metro?
I stayed metro, then I did my detective training, and then I was a detective in metro for a couple of years before I went regional. And so I was a regional detective when I left the job.
And I know that when we caught up last time, there was one. Was that when you were a detective where the guy shot his face off with the shotgun? Were you a detective then?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So we'll talk about that a little bit further down the track. And so after 4 years, you always wanted to go that detective side of things, and you like. Did you feel that you could have stayed general duties, or was it that calling of becoming a detective was too strong?
Yeah, I was done with general duties. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was very lost. I was like, I don't really enjoy this anymore. And I wanted more, I guess. So it was very much a calling that I wanted to go down the detective path. Plus, I'd always wanted to do it. It was always a thing that I'd had before I even joined the police. I wanted to do it. So, yeah,
So
I felt called to it.
talk me through that process, because do you go and like obviously you got to go to detective school and you got to go back to the academy and to become a detective, and is that a grueling process to become a detective?
Yeah, it was then. I think it's a little easier now from what I can understand from people I've spoken to. But when I went through, there wasn't a desperate kind of call for detectives, so it was hard. We had to apply. God, I need to try and remember this, but basically, I think we got a book, and you had to complete a whole heap of tasks in this book as a general duties copper. and then apply to detective training school. And then you had an interview on a panel. Yeah, an interview on a panel where you were literally hounded with questions. Oh my God, it was horrendous in that interview room. I was so nervous. And yeah, they just fire at you, like they would fire questions at you. No, and they like just make you answer really, really quickly. So they just put you on the spot quite heavily. And then after the interview panel, I think we just went then into, if you passed that, you got in, and then we did the training school itself. And then once you'd finished the training school, you were what we call an I4, so like a probationary detective. And then while you're in I4, you get another booklet that you have to complete, and you have to complete all these tasks in the booklet and submit the tasks to detective training school. Once that's marked off, you go back to the academy, you then sit an I5 course and an exam, and then you become an I5, which is your substantive detective position.
So are you then given like a badge, and a special badge like the Queensland detectives get their badge changed to a gold badge? Like, does it change for you guys as well?
Yeah, we just get a detective badge.
Okay, yeah. And with that, like, another proud moment to pass. And so is it like a 6-month course, or like, is it self-paced, or?
No, it was. See, they keep changing it as well, and I can't remember what we ended up doing. I want to say 6 weeks.
Wow. Yeah, right.
Was it 6 weeks or 8 weeks? I think it was a 6-week thing. Yeah, because I think they kept changing between 5 and 6 weeks. I could be wrong, but I think it was about 6 weeks from memory. My memory's so bad from back then. But yeah, it wasn't like 6 months or anything, but it was in like more of an intensive, shorter period of time. And then we were there every day, like the academy when you went through, like you were there daily. That was your new workplace.
And with that, once you'd passed, obviously another proud moment. And do you become a general detective, or can you select what special branch you want to go down, or how's that work?
So when you're an I4, so you're probationary, you get sent wherever they send you within Metro. So you do 9-month stints. Again, this is when I went through. So my first 9-month stint was at Perth Detectives, which was horrible. I had a really crappy team, and also we were in being in Perth, like we were dealing with a lot of nightclubby stuff. Yeah, so it was. I just wasn't a great. But anyway, it was. You got to do what you got to do. So I went there, and then I was sent to the sex offender management squad, where I used to interview pedophiles, basically, to simplify that. And then when it was time for my last rotation, I then opted for regional WA so that I got to choose. They had started talking about sending people regional if they hadn't been regional, and so I thought I would get on the front foot and try and apply to go somewhere that's not too far from the metro. So I applied for a regional town that's only 2 hours away from Perth, so that it wasn't too far, and ultimately that's where I went for my last spot. Finished my probationary status there, and then I stayed on as a substantive detective in regional WA.
And what are you doing there? Like, are you then going, like, you're assigned to a station as their detective, or what's happening?
So I was part of the child abuse team in the regional town that I was in. So predominantly I did child abuse for the first majority of it. And then I actually moved to one of the proactive teams because my mental health was starting to decline. And my sergeant at the time, who is just a lovely human being, I think he picked that up, and he was like, look, I think maybe we just shift you to one of the other teams and you can go and do a bit more proactive stuff. I was like, yeah, cool, sounds good.
Is that because you were, as you said, you were struggling with that empathy that you would take on the trauma of these victims that you were dealing with?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I took it on. It was just more, how do I word it? It's just a lot. Like, it's not, when you're dealing with child abuse, you are dealing with the victims a lot more than what you are when you deal with a shop robbery or any other kind of, like a ram raid, or like, yeah, car thefts, things like that. With child abuse work, it's the victims rely on you heavily because what they're going through is so overwhelming and so traumatic for them that they've never been through the system. Half the time child abuse victims have come out of the woodwork years and years down the track because they've been too scared to not be believed. So they rely on the police heavily to understand the system and how the court process works, and also to have a sense that someone still believes them. And so they need a lot of reassurance. And I think that's, for me, it was, my job didn't just end when I finished the day. I would often get home and have phone calls from victims and stuff. And, look, all that being said, we when we knock off, we kind of knock off anyway. But, there was a couple of times where I'd get stuck on a phone call after work, like just as I was leaving or something, and then be on the phone for however long afterwards with a victim. So I think it was just very taxing emotionally of having to investigate that kind of thing. I was also a specialist child interviewer, which I loved. I loved interviewing children. If I went back to the police now, if they could put me in a spot where I just interviewed kids and did a little bit of other stuff too, great. Like, I really enjoyed it. But again, it's quite heavy. You're interviewing children that have been offended against. So, yeah, I think being involved in all of it and then investigating the actual offender arresting and interviewing the actual offender as well, started just...
I remember speaking to Christy McVie, she specialised in the child sex like that side of policing abuse, and she's smashing it now. Go back and listen to episode 104 with Christy McVie. She's doing amazing things in that space, and just killing it, and shining a light to parents on how to protect their kids, especially online these days. And I remember talking to her, and also episode 80, Sonia Leading from Queensland, and she's in the child sex abuse squad up there. And I don't know, Meg, I don't know how you do it. I really don't. Like, me personally, I'd want to just jump across the table and just want to strangle these guys and what they do, and I'm including women in this as well, because I have seen women, I've heard of cases of women doing it to men. So it's not just males, it is females. And talk me through that, because it's fascinating to, as you say, to sit across from a pedophile and wonder what goes on in their head, and that they think this is totally normal behavior. What is that like? And did you ever find yourself like sitting across going, I just want to strangle you? Or like what? Talk me through that.
I'm going to be very general here, but I did find that majority of child sex offenders are cowards. They're very cowardly. They're over cooperative, and always in completely denial, as in, oh no, I never did that, or it was consensual, or so it was almost nauseating to interview people like that, because as a copper, you're often used to people telling you to go F yourself
Yeah.
and all the rest of it. And now you've got someone who, will pretty much massage your feet if you ask them to. Like, they're just, very, very cowardly humans, and it almost made you like feel sick, and I guess that's where you would then start putting in your head together the pieces of, like, this is why they are so good at grooming and why they do groom children, because they are so weak themselves that they are picking on weak and vulnerable people, and that is what is so sickening in itself. And so, in a weird way, you don't want to strangle them, but you just are like, they just nauseate you, and it's an eerie kind of experience. But also remembering, I suppose, that every child sex offender, they're offending for different reasons. It's not like every single one of them has just been born a pedophile. Like, some of them have got it can range from why they're in that kind of place in the end anyway. And look, there's no excuse for it whatsoever, but as an interviewer speaking across the table from someone who has been accused of doing it, it's almost, you're almost in disbelief. Like, how could you? Like, how can somebody actually physically do that to somebody else, or want to even emotionally do that? Because a lot of the stuff would be online as well, don't forget. It's not all contact offending. Some of it was non-contact offending. And again, it was often very weak people, very broken people, who pick vulnerable children, because they're easy targets. And it was just nauseating.
And as I say, I take my hat off to you, Christy, Sonia, and a couple of other male veterans that I've had on as well that have been in that space. And I honestly, I don't know how you did it, and like, all kudos to you, because thank you for taking these I'll say it, the scum off, and they're in jail, and like, some of the cases that you, like, obviously we can't mention them for legal reasons, but you would have you would have worked on some pretty pretty disgusting cases that, and was it satisfying for you guys, like, putting in the detective work, getting your briefs ready, and then going to court, and then seeing the the perpetrator found guilty? And that would have been a very satisfying for you guys as a team. But then also, validating the, as you say, the person that this has happened to.
Yeah, for sure. Of course, very satisfying. It was one of the reasons why I wanted to be in this child abuse space. Was to be able to lock people up and know that they are going to get a decent amount of time away. One of the things that I really struggled with policing otherwise was the shitty justice system. The old lady would get burgled and have her engagement ring stolen, and they'd get a slap on the wrist, and it used to really infuriate me. So being in the child abuse space, I knew that they would get a lot of time. And that gave me satisfaction. But obviously there are also cases where they are not found guilty. And that also sits with you of like, well, did they do that? And, was there a flaw in the investigation that led to a not guilty outcome? And could that be prevented? Like, yeah, it's so, unfortunately, as good as it feels for guilty verdicts and for the victims and stuff, unfortunately there were often cases that people were found not guilty. And look, you've got to just trust that that's the right thing, but it's hard.
Oh, of course. And there's one question here that I'm going to ask you, and it's, you and I have built up a trust and a friendship for a long time now, and this is not one that I've said to you before, but is there one case that you remember from your time that sticks with you of all the cases that you worked on when you're in that space?
Um,
And,
yeah. Yeah, I think so. Two popped into my head. But the one that I'm thinking of in particular was a very well groomed child, um, by a stepfather, and they'd have been having sexual relations for quite some time, to the point where the child protected him in this case.
oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. It got to a point where we were interviewing. I was interviewing. Actually, was it me interviewing her? Or was I listening in on the interview? I think my friend was interviewing, because I was investigating. I think so. Yeah, you couldn't do both basically. And yeah, she wanted to stop the interview because when she realised he was going to get in trouble.
Wow.
And yeah, basically said, "Oh no, I wanted it too, but she was a child."
And is that, did you find that a lot? Like some of those cases that would happen a lot, that they'd groom them that much that they would say, "Oh no, it's okay. Like what they're doing is normal," and it's like, no, that's not a normal thing.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, the hardest part was her mum. So the wife of the stepdad was, she said, I spoke to her at length, about it afterwards, and I remember her saying to me, like, I trusted this man with my children, and I used to say what a good dad and role model he was for my kids, and we had a beautiful marriage, a beautiful sex life, beautiful everything, and meanwhile he's groomed my daughter this whole time, and they would like go for drives and have sex in the car when they went for a drive, and she was like, what the fuck, like, how did I miss this? And so then you can see the cogs moving of like, how did I miss this, and what have I done to my child, and at the same time mourning her own lover that she thought was her lover that has been doing wrong. But it's like a double-edged sword, and that was always hard as well, is seeing family members of victims blame themselves.
And that never, there's no, like, as you say too, like there's no, like, all you can do is try and support them. That's all you can do. And like, that's, as you say, like this guy is supposed to be a protector. Like, he's the stepfather. He's supposed to protect her, not, as you say, groom her, and years of, yeah, it's really sad that, it's, yeah. Anyway, we'll move off that now, because I'll say things that I probably shouldn't say. So I'll protect myself. But
Yeah.
yeah, and so after a while, you move out of that space, and then you go into the like proactive side of being a detective. So what are you doing here? Like, are you still stationed at the same station, or do you move on?
Yeah, so still at the same station, just in a different team. And so that team that I moved into, we would deal with a range of offences. So sex assaults, robberies, homicides. Initially, we would obviously homicide squad would come up and take over if there was one, but we would still potentially be the first on, if need be, to hold the fort down. Big drug busts. Yeah, so that was then again proactive, led to a more of a variety of offending again.
So you mentioned that your mental health started to deteriorate at this point, and you do move back from regional, you do post back to Perth, don't you?
No, I ended up, I tried to get what they call a compassionate transfer back to Perth. And typical WAPOL made it very, very difficult for me, and they wanted this and they wanted that, and then they wanted, like, I'd get medical support, from doctors and stuff, and then they kept wanting more and more and more, and I was getting more and more, to my breaking point, I suppose is the best way to put it, and I eventually snapped in my detective sergeant's office, and he told me to take some time off, which I did. I took some sick leave, and it ended up being extended sick leave, and I never returned. I ended up resigning.
And I want to talk about that because as we mentioned, years and years of trauma had been building, especially in your general duties days, going to, DVs, going to, murders, suicides, and doing the work that you were doing with the child abuse stuff. That's taking its toll. And I mentioned earlier on was one of the suicides that you went to, and it was pretty gruesome the first time you spoke about it, but it's important to show that this is how policing is. Can you talk me through that suicide and what happened that day?
Yeah, so I couldn't even tell you. I like remembering the call come through and stuff. I don't remember that, but I do remember getting to the job itself. And basically, it was a male who had, I guess, succumbed unfortunately to his own mental health battles, and he shot himself in the face with a shotgun in a pond, so in water. And when we got there, the police divers had, she's actually a friend of mine who pulled him out of the water. She'd located him in the water and pulled him out, pulled a shotgun out as well. And we had to try and get fingerprints from him because he had no face. So we couldn't ID him by face. So basically it was wet, it was raining. He'd been submerged in water, so your skin starts kind of going soft. And yeah, I just remember us trying to help the forensics guys get some sort of fingerprints from him so that we could try and ID him. And we were there, it was an overtime job, and we were there for a while, and it was so fucked. I probably should be using a more intellectual word than that, but
no, honestly,
no. It was just one of those things where you're like, I shouldn't be seeing a human without a face. This is just fucked, And yeah, it was other coppers there. We all did it. We all did the job and dealt with it, and we eventually finished, knocked off, and drove back to the station and knocked off. And I think I got home and drank some beers, probably drank some wine, and went to bed.
And this is what I want to highlight to our non-first responder, non-military listener. This is what police do day to day, and sometimes do maybe 2, 3, 4 times a day, that they attend suicides, or they're pulling people out of cars, they're running into burning houses, kicking in doors, doing, risking their lives to protect and serve. And that is, as you say, you're trying to self-medicate, Meg, of the trauma. You're compartmentalizing this trauma, and it's compartmentalizing, I'll deal with it later, and which we're going to talk, eventually what you do now and the amazing work that you're doing in that space. And this is what I want to highlight to the listener, that this is not a normal job. This, you knew that when you joined up, you were going to face trauma, but it's that constant day to day, every day, the trauma, and you love the job, but it's the trauma and the politics and the bullshit that gets in the way of why you left the job.
Mm-mm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And did you speak to your mates about that, and that specific one that, that was that was one of the final, because I remember when we spoke that was one of the final ones that just pushed you over the edge to go, I need to take sick leave. Was there support with your mates to go, hey, not great, that one was really shit, and as you said, it was fucked? Did you get around your mates and say, hey, I'm not traveling good at the moment?
It was really hard. I was yes and no. And you made me think of there's a particular bloke that I worked with. at the time who I actually got on really, really well with, and his wife was a copper as well, and I really valued him as a person. And I remember speaking to him one day, and I said to him, I'm really struggling being regional. I just want to go back home. Like, I just want to go back to Perth. That's all I want to do. And I said, but I feel like I've failed. I feel like I'm giving up. I feel like I've not done enough by not completing my tenure in regional WA, and by basically cheating by trying to go back. And he always said to me, you've got to do what's right for you. And if you're just a number, and if you are not traveling well, put your compassionate transfer in and go. Like, just ask for you to, your time to be kind of cut short in regional. And I remember being like, oh yes, like, I'm heard, thank you. And moving forward, once I had left and I was on long-term sick leave, when I had touched base with a different friend of mine back in that station, they had mentioned to me that this person that I was just talking about was bitching about me and the fact that I had left and I was on long-term sick leave. And I remember being so gutted, because I was like, I remember sitting in the car with him and him telling me to, try and get a compassionate transfer and try and go back. And I felt so seen and understood in how I was feeling. Yet when I then was on long-term mental health leave, I'd heard that he was then bitching and moaning about me being off. And I just was so hurt by it. And I still to this day am hurt by that, I think a little bit. But I look, at the same time, I understand that I was holding a space. I was also holding an FTE where they could potentially get someone else in to do the job, and they were probably short-staffed, and he was probably thinking, she's on sick leave and we could be having help here. But ultimately, that was not my intention to screw any of my colleagues over. I didn't know how else to deal with what I was dealing with. And it had got to a point where I was getting to a point of being suicidal. And so I had to do something. And unfortunately, that was leaving my colleagues short for a short period of time. And that's also why I left the job so abruptly as soon as I got another job. And I often wonder if I rushed it. Sometimes I think I should have just stayed off for a little bit longer and maybe seen how I went and tried to reintegrate back into it. But I don't regret anything, because I believe everything happens for a reason. But the reason I left so quickly was because I knew I was holding an FTE at that station.
And,
So,
and I know myself, and as you do, that we've both been there. We've both had suicide ideations. We've both, got very close to saying goodbye, and it's a really dark place to be in. And listening to that, it pisses me off that he, is like saying, you got to do what's right for you, and then bitches behind your back. That to me is, that's cowardly. Like, it's so cowardly, and it's, yeah. Meg, I could say another thing, but I won't. I'll bite my tongue. But yeah, to that bloke, mate, if the boot's on the other foot, and if you ever go through it, I hope that people don't talk behind your back, because it's a shit place to be in. So that's what I'll say on that, Meg. And I won't get you to call him out, because
no, I would never.
I won't do.
Yeah, I get where I get everyone comes from their own perspective of what they're going through at their moment in their time and in their lives. So I don't hold any hatred towards him or anything like that. I feel sad that was kind of the response that I got. But everyone is responding and reacting to things that they know through their own perception and lenses, and that's all people do. So
yeah. Do you actually feel, especially being, now that you're out, do you feel that is a culture across the board in policing, that, if people are on their way out, that you're on your way out? Like, there's nothing more than, an ex, if you're an ex, like, if that is that felt across the board?
yeah, I think so. I think it is also very much a culture thing of you just get on with it. You don't yeah, I think I said this to you in the last one, but it's this whole, you chose to do this job. It was your decision. You wanted to be a police officer, therefore you have to take what comes with being a police officer. And yes, to a degree, of course, you chose to do a job, but that also doesn't mean that you don't struggle, or things may not go the way you expected them to go, and therefore you require a little bit of support. But unfortunately, it is very much a culture of toughen up, you chose this, and you need to get on with it. And if you are not coping or whatever, instead of people looking kind of from where your perspective is and how you might be feeling, you're very focused inwards on how it's affecting you. So it's then about, well, and that's because I believe personally that most coppers are struggling in some capacity with either overtime, fatigue, anxiety, PTSD. Like, obviously there's a range of things, and so it's a very quick and easy thing for people to do to look how things are consistently affecting them, and therefore project blame onto other people, instead of actually looking at, okay, like, what's actually going on for that person, and how can we either support them, or how can we make use and be resourceful with what we have, instead of finding more reason to be negative and to project more blame and project more negativity. And unfortunately, that's just very cultural in the police. It's a very much, it's that person's fault. It's that person's fault.
And as you know, culture is everything. And, you know, if you've got positivity around you, positivity, as you like, and we'll get into the work that you do in a minute. If you've got positivity around you, and I know that personally, positivity attracts positivity, negativity attracts negativity. And if you've got someone that is negative, it drags the team down to that level. Like, it is so hard to break away from that and to not let it affect you and go, no, I'm good, I'm staying positive. It's, the job's fucked, everything in the job's fucked, this is fucked, the boss is fucked, the service is fucked, everything's, you know. And it's, I know when I worked for you know, the RFS, same thing, had a guy exactly that the everything was never his fault. It was always everyone else's fault, and the culture was, you know, the service is shit, this is shit, and it drags you down, and you get to a point where you're like, I don't want to come to work anymore, because you're just like, I can't deal with this toxic person. Like, they're just such a narcissist, and, you know, and yeah, so culture's everything, and we'll talk about that now, and then I'm going to talk about your transition out. And policing across the world, you know, we're hemorrhaging, like every police veteran I talk to is, you know, 3,000 down here, we're short, you know, 2,000 here, we're short hundreds. And why do you think that is, Meg? Why do you think that worldwide policing is not you know, we're losing so many more than we're retaining at the moment? Like, what do you think it is?
I think that there's just a lack of support in how to regulate your emotions and your nervous system in doing such a overstimulated job. I think that people are starting to realize that the money, whilst it's not terrible, you can also earn more without having to be subject to very traumatic things. And so I just think that if people were taught how the nervous system operates and how how important emotional regulation is in jobs like that, we would have less people reaching burnout, less people reaching PTSD, less people. And I mean, look, it doesn't change the fact you still are exposed to traumatic events. But if people knew how to manage that energy and that emotion that comes with experiencing traumatic events, our bodies would store less of it, and we would be less burnt out and less fried. Basically, our nervous systems would be less fried. I also think, tips on like hypervigilance and how to recognize when you are suffering hypervigilance, and how to also see some sort of safety in your surroundings, because policing puts you in a position where, unfortunately, because all you see and do is negative things and things that invoke fear in communities, that is what you deal with day in, day out. So you forget that there's normal things and normal people that go on around you. You become very jaded, and also, to you, that every second person's a pedophile, or this person's probably going to rob you, or and I think when you live like that, it can be very exhausting. And so I think there's a shortage of coppers everywhere, because people are going, it's longevity wise, I don't think it is a career for the long term. I think it serves a purpose, and we need coppers, and I am so grateful that I did go through the job. I still miss the job, so it's, but longevity speaking, I just don't think it's there.
And I think too that yourself, policing's changed. It's not what it was when you joined the job, and it is when since you've now left the job. And there's so much wokeness now in that, police can't be police anymore. Like, there's always someone with a camera. There's always, there's overuse of force, or there's, police have constantly got to think about, if I do something here, will I get an internal investigation, or will I lose my job and then I lose my house to pay my mortgage, or and these are all things that you don't want police to. You want to be as clear-minded. Okay, I know the laws, I know the legislations. You have broken you've broken the law, and no, I'm going to arrest you. And if I need to use force, I'm going to use force. And because you're going into life and death situations, Meg. Like, you are potentially going to have to pull your gun and potentially take someone's life. You want to be as clear-minded without going, oh shit, if I do something wrong here, I might have an investigation, I might lose my job, or like that's how policing has changed. It's not what, and from so many of you guys that I've had on, they said, look, we love the job. It's the politics and the internal politics that you get the shits with.
100%, yeah, because you're consistently like having to watch your own back for trying to do your job. You get trained to do things a specific way, but if you do them the specific way, you get scrutinised for doing them the way that you were trained to do them. I remember once I got in trouble for, it was caught on body-worn camera. I got spat on by an offender. I remember my sergeant pulled me into the office and basically said to me that they had insufficient evidence to charge him, even though I had a shirt covered in spit that I had to throw in the bin. Anyway, insufficient evidence to charge him, and I got a hiding for giving his sister the bird because I was telling her that he'd assaulted a copper, and she was going, no, she hadn't. And I'm not saying it's right what I did. Like, I'm not, I'm not sitting there going, oh yeah, I was allowed to do that. Of course, it's not ideal being a copper giving someone the bird, but I did, and I can't remember why, but she said something, and I just flipped her off, and out of that whole incident, I got spat at. He spat on me, and I got in the shit, and he didn't get charged. Yeah, and I was like, if this isn't a reflection on what policing is like, I don't fucking know what is.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You spat on, Meg, like, this is like, you are spat on by an offender, and you're getting the reprimand, which, okay, look, and I understand it, Meg. I probably would have done and I think 99% of the population would have done exactly what you did and stuck the finger up and gone, I don't come to work to get spat on, to then watch the offender walk out the door and no charge, like, no one deserves that, Meg. Nobody.
Yeah, I don't know. He ran away. The guy who spat on me ran away. It was his sister I gave birth to because she was going on about something. I don't even know what. But
Yeah.
yeah, everything. You're right. It's politics, and everything is on camera, and everything is scrutinized, and you have to basically defend your presence in everything you do. And yeah, it gets to a point where it's like, what is the point? Like, what is the point in busting your ass trying to uphold what legislation tell us to uphold and do the right thing if we get a smack for it anyway?
And like we'll talk about in a minute. So do you think with like police, do you think that to stop the hemorrhaging and the retention, do you think that you give police like an extra couple of weeks off? And for you, when you transition, do you think that if you had like said, hey, I need like you went off and you said I need to take some sick leave. Do you think taking that extended like have a break sabbatical and then like potentially try and get you guys back, do you think like if you gave police an extra 2 weeks off a year instead of getting 4 weeks, you get 6 weeks, or like to try and stop, like to try and retain some of, because like last weekend I was speaking to some of the guys and they just said it. They go, getting a probationary constable starting, it basically takes 2 years to build them up to a standard where they can then go out on their own. For the first 2 years, you're essentially babying them to a point to get them to know the job inside and out. And like they were saying the other day, there's like 5 years now, and they're becoming senior constables. Like they're like that experience has gone. What do you like? What do you think of that?
Which part? The extra leave or the fact
Yeah,
that there's
the extra leave part.
look, help, I guess. It would definitely help. I think the main issue, and God, how we combat this, who knows, but agriculture is, it's a fact that, yeah, you can give the extra leave and you could say, okay, you get extra leave, whether that's, I don't know, mental health leave. But the reality of it is when you take it, you are also criticised by your colleagues for taking it. And so it also becomes of, I don't take leave or I don't go on sick leave. I remember when I would be off sick, which, look, to be fair, yeah, I was probably on a lot of sick leave in my time, but I was always criticised for it. And the more I was criticised for it, the more my mental health declined. Yep. So I think it's very much a culture-based to happen so that people know and feel safe to take leave, and they feel safe enough to be like, I need a break. As acknowledging though that we're not using that just as an excuse to consistently not deal with our shit as well. Like, I'm very much a believer the world is also feeling a little bit like we're going down a bit of a path where it's becoming an excuse not to just do the things we've got to do. But yeah, I do just think culturally it needs to change. However, extra leave, of course, would never hurt. I think they need to pay coppers more, because when you can go and get a job like investigating in a role like I did when I left the police initially, I was working from home 2 days a week on $25,000 more a year, Monday to Friday, 7 till 3, 8 till 4, every day, no overtime. So yep. you sit there and just go, people look at this shit and go, why the fuck would I stay in the police and deal with this shit?
Yeah, that's right. And that's the thing. And it's, yeah, I mean, like we're not going to solve the retention issue between you and me, but it's you've been at the coal face. And like, do you feel that there's just so much like the top brass now are so disattached to the guys on the ground that they're like they live in a bit of a dream world of thinking that everything's rosy and okay. Like, do you think there's so much distance between the two now?
Look now, when I was there, yes. But I also think everyone was struggling. And I think we get very caught up in, again, like I was saying, it becomes a me, this is affecting a me and where I'm at. But if you look at like every level and every area, rank, like all of it, everyone is struggling in their own position, but looking for a way to blame others. And so there's definitely going to be a divide in guys on the ground versus up the top, because the guys at the top are going to have their own pressures, and then the guys on the floor are going to have a different set of pressures. The guys at the top are going to it's going to be a very political pressure, and how we want to look from a government perspective potentially. And then on the ground, it's a burnout and like staff retention and mental health type issues, and so they're very different. Which doesn't help, because if you're not living it, you can't experience it to understand the other person's perspective.
Yeah, and I think too now policing's changed, as you know, that it is the police are expected to do more now, and there's less police on the ground. The amount of things that the police have to do now is just, it's changed so much. And so you've got that perspective as well, and absolutely. And you mentioned it before, is that if you had have understood how to maintain your emotions and the traumas and the how your body reacts and responds, and you do that sort of work now, and you that we're going to highlight that in a second. That would, if you knew that at the start of your career, it might be a bit different now. Like if you had known that holistic approach, back then to where you are now.
100%. I would. There's a bloke in WA now who does a speech for recruits on PTSD and stuff, which we never had before. Wouldn't mind having a chat to him, but I think that if we were taught in the academy how to emotionally regulate, and we did like a whole section on it, which is what the stuff that I teach now, and we understood the nervous system, hypervigilance, how trauma actually is stored in the body, and how we can move through those feelings and emotions. If we were taught that, I guarantee there would be far less severe cases of PTSD. I'm not saying that it would be eradicated, no, because the amount of trauma a police officer has to endure is quite a lot. But at the end of the day, I think it would be far less, and people would be getting far less burnt out. Something needs to intervene, and there needs to be some support in that space.
Absolutely, and we'll get into. We're going to talk about what you're doing now in a second, and I'll go back to. I got a bit sidetracked there, but I'll go back to. So after 8 years in the police, and you go to that, as you say, suicide where pretty graphic. Guy shoots his face off, which is horrific. You do transition out of the police, and what was that like? Did you feel that you had lost your purpose, and how did you find purpose again?
It was a huge identity struggle, huge. It's something that is still takes work, conscious work for me to move through. Because it's hard. You work so hard to achieve something that you've wanted for so long, and you identify as being a police officer, you identify as being a detective, you identify with helping the community, and that's who you are. To then leave that space is very difficult, and it takes a lot of self-compassion and a lot of time and less pressure on yourself to move through those identity shifts, and also a lot of reminding yourself of why you have left and what you get to look forward to. In terms of purpose, I 100% did. I was very lucky to have found myself a mindset coach when I left, in a very desperate plea to heal myself. And through that, I ended up down the path of neuro-linguistic programming. And ultimately it was like, I need to coach other people. So I basically healed myself with holistic methods of somatic practices, and really mindfulness, presence, and understanding the nervous system. I studied a certificate in complex PTSD. I did my NLP. I did masters in NLP. And I was like, I need a coach, and that was my new purpose. And it all made sense. Everything just made sense. I was like, okay, this is why policing no longer aligned with me. Like, it wasn't. I'm not broken. I'm not this was meant for me, and for a reason. It was for a reason that I left. It was for a reason that it didn't work. And so I found my purpose, and that doesn't take away the identity battles. You still then are learning to identify as being a coach and not a police officer. But for me, thankfully, I found my purpose. Yeah.
And that's how you and I connected, actually. So we connected through, because I've gone down that path myself of the holistic approach to healing, and it is healing. And you know, you and I speak now, and it's. I always say this to anyone who comes to me and says, how did you get from, you know, standing on the edge of a cliff to where you are now, doing a podcast? You're a speaker, you're an author. How did you get there? And I said, well, it's hard work. And as you know yourself, you've got to do the work. It's not going to happen for you. You've actually got to take those first steps. And I live by this saying of a veteran mate of mine, and it's the best piece of advice he ever gave me was, and shout out to you, Coco, absolute legend of a bloke, blown up in Afghanistan and died 3 times and is still here that day. And he has this saying that the first 3 steps that you take in the day are the hardest steps you'll make. If you can make those first 3 steps, you can accomplish anything. And that's what it is. It's getting in and doing the work, and, you know, doing the reflecting, the writing out, you know, journaling, and like being, you know, grateful, and, you know, the gratefulness work and the gratitude and all that stuff. That helped you to get to where you are, and it certainly helped me. And that's where you and we connected, and through a mutual friend, and my mentor. You actually know my mentor really well. And yeah, so that's what you're doing now, and you've transitioned out of the police, and you've now found this new space that you're working in. And so for the listener, tell us what you are doing now in that space.
Yeah, sure. So basically, I work as a life coach. When I first started coaching, I specialised with first responders, and I've moved into specifically working with women and mums now, specifically as well. So I guess the easiest way to explain it is kind of what I've studied. So I've done neuro-linguistic programming, my master's in that, complex PTSD, and also energetics work. And so I'm qualified in areas to facilitate interventions that get to the root cause of where things stem from for us. So either limiting beliefs that we have about ourselves, or how traumas get stored. And basically it's about, I teach people how to feel safe in their bodies again, to be able to live happier, longer lives, as in we are happier for longer periods of time, and acknowledging that all emotion exists. So all emotions welcome. You know, we can't feel the happy without the sad. It just doesn't work that way. We can't have it's polarity. And so I guess I help people with practical tools. For me, I'd always seen psychologists and no one had ever shown me practical ways of moving through emotion. So I do a lot of somatic work, which is, look, if you're listening, look it up. Look up somatic practices. I would explain it, but like my baby's due to be fed soon. So.
Yeah.
Love you all, but yeah. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, it's somatic work. And yeah, look, there is grateful work and mindfulness and journaling and stuff, but it is also about moving through emotions, and people just aren't taught how to do that. Like some people listening are probably like, I don't even know what you mean by that. So yeah, it's about understanding like what I do is understanding trauma, how trauma is stored in the body, understanding the nervous system and the effects of having an unregulated or dysregulated nervous system, and ways to start regulating it. A lot of people with very dysregulated nervous systems, like first responders, are on high alert, hypervigilance a lot, and then they really, really struggle to come back to like a baseline, so they're always on, and that also leads to a lot of illnesses, so a lot of autoimmune or chronic illness or chronic pain. And so yeah, just teaching you how to start regulating, moving through anxiety, moving through depression. I actually came off a 15-year journey of antidepressants when I did this work. I'm not saying that that's what the goal is, but I did. Yeah, and coach people through all of it, the highs, the lows, the understanding that life is seasons and seasons come and seasons go, and how can we make best use of those seasons, whether they be good or whether they be not so nice. So yeah, there's a lot to it, what I do, but basically I'm a life coach, and I, in a very holistic way, and I am trained in methods to specifically work through trauma.
And that I had a recent discussion with a former SAS veteran. Now he's a psychologist, Harry Moffat, and he's very much down the approach now of the holistic approach, but also working alongside the clinical side of that.
Yeah.
You can still go down the holistic approach, but you might have to have those antidepressants, or you might need but they do work. That there is I'm absolute living proof of a holistic approach. Like now I do my ice baths every week. I love my ice bath. I do my cold showers in the morning. I take my shoes and socks off and I go and ground myself out in the grass, and all these things that people go, oh, that's weird, Adam. Like, what are you smoking? Well, it works. It works for me, and what it does for my mental health and the cortisol, and I exercise now, I eat right, I get enough sleep. It's all these things, Meg. You're looking at you're agreeing, nodding your head, going, "Yep, this is you're ticking all." And I feel the best I've felt for a long time because I'm ticking all those boxes, and it's and now I'm not like you. I'm off medication. I don't have it anymore, and some people need it, and others
100%,
yeah. So it works side by side, and I love that holistic approach, and and anyone who is struggling out there, maybe be curious to look down the holistic approach, because it might just be that missing link in your that then could open up a whole new avenue of life for you, and it certainly has for me. And so that's what you're doing now, and we're nearly finished because I can hear your little man in the background going, he wants mummy. So we're nearly there, and so looking back now, and all that you've been through, was joining the police still the best decision apart from having your little man?
Yeah. I don't regret anything in life. Everything has taught me a lesson or led me to where I am today. Even the times that I have held shame around certain things, I truly believe that everything in life is leading us down a path that we may not even know what that is yet, but it's for a reason. So I loved my policing career. I have such good memories from it, as well as the traumatic ones. Like, it's definitely, it gave me a lot of lifelong friends, lifelong memories of laughter, and a lot of resilience, you know. And I guess it also helps me be a better coach today. My intuition, like all things like that. I mean, you know, I know a lot of coppers aren't into holistic kind of spiritual stuff, but I'm telling you right now, if you want to be a good copper, you're going to have some good intuition. And so it goes hand in hand. And yeah, I'm very grateful for what the police gave me.
Absolutely, and I'll back you up there. And faith is huge, and it's been a big part of my journey. And you know, it's part of my healing is finding my faith again, because I turned my back on it. And you know, I'm proud to say that I've actually found faith again. And you know, I'm proud of that I can wholeheartedly say I'm whole again, because you know, and that pun not intended there. That is not a I'm holy again. So
Yeah. See, I'm very much a spiritual person, not so much in faith, but whatever you have to
exactly,
you know, to like hold a belief and feel good in. And I just think what people do, what anyone does for themselves is for themselves, and
exactly.
If it works for them, it works for them. And if it's not a problem for someone else, it's not a problem.
Exactly. I love it. And you know, the best thing is, as you say, you love the memories, the humor, but you also love the black humor too, because you've still got the quirkiness in you, and that's what I love about you. So that's never going to leave you. And, you know, so what advice would you give to any young person that is thinking of, you know, a career as a police officer, or going down that first responder path of being a fiery ambulance nurse? What advice would you give them?
My advice would be to have some life experience as best you can. So if you can hold off for a couple of years and go and live your life, party, do whatever you got to do. Not that that's for everyone, you know, whatever makes you happy, and really go balls to the wall with it for a bit. Do that, and get yourself a coach or a therapist or a mentor that works in mental health spaces for the duration of your time. Get someone, even if it's that you're checking in once a month with somebody. If you can have somebody in your pocket, or somebody that's just with you, that's there, that you can go to for mental health support, do that. And be very open-minded, like you were saying before with therapies, that sometimes people just don't click. Try something different.
Absolutely. No, great advice. And, you know, be prepared that you are going to face trauma. It is going to be, you know,
it's inevitable.
It's inevitable. But put the steps in, you know, early, so that you can, and, you know, maybe go and see a psych before you start, and then, you know, have that psych going through your career, and, you know, maybe that might help too. So yeah, great advice. And what advice would you give your 18-year-old self, and would she listen?
No. No. These are very ridiculous. No. The advice that I'd give my 18-year-old self would be to just trust. And that would be for everyone. Trust the failings, trust the hard times, trust the good times, and follow your gut. Trust that things are always happening for you. And if your gut is telling you that something's not right, or is leading you to somewhere that feels right, follow it.
Great advice. Absolutely. And how do people get in touch with you? So if they do want to, you know, if there are first responders out there that are struggling with that trauma side of things, and they've now left the job, how do they get in touch with you to potentially coach with you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. So my Instagram handle is _findyourtruth with Meg. I also have a website, which is www.findyourtruth.com.au, and or Facebook, Meg Jarvis.
Awesome. We'll put all those links in the show notes, Meg, and that way we can, try and get some more, and the important work that you're doing now, which I see it all the time, and you're killing it, mate. You really are, and
Thanks,
you are, like, you're killing it as a mum, and as I mentioned when we first caught up, you were pregnant, and now you've got the little man's running around, and so what are your plans going into the future?
Look, I'm just planning on continuing to coach, and deepening my work there. I would love to do some speaking gigs as well, and really try and get this message out there that we really can heal our own bodies with our own selves, to a degree, obviously, and that it's really okay to reach out. And yeah, so I guess deepening my work in the coaching space and trying to make more of an impact.
And potentially extending the family, Meg?
Look, we need a few years, all right? It's just look, pregnancy wasn't my favorite thing. I'm just going to throw that out there. So I'm just going to enjoy my baby while I can before I put myself through that again.
I remember when we caught up last time, you were like, "Yeah, I kind of want him out now. Like I'm done. Like this, You're like, I remember you going, Adam, I can't go to the gym. This is shit. Like, I hate this.
I know, I did. I went to the gym as much as I could, but pregnancy and I were not friends. But you know what? Worth it with my gorgeous little boy. So
100%. And
maybe one day.
Yeah, he's an absolute little gem. I saw him before we started, and I can hear him in the background. So hang on, little man. I've just got one last little bit for Mum, and then you can have her. So, Meg, your story, it's one of true grit, determination, doing things on your terms, and you've served your country and your state with pride, and brought pride to your family, and thank you for your service. I want to thank you, and thank you for trusting me to share your story. And I mean, we could have spoken for another couple of hours and gone further, but I know busy times with being a mum and doing everything you're doing, so thank you for coming on again. And there's a quote that I want to finish with that I believe sums you up. The quote is, "Empowering those around you to be heard and valued makes the difference between a leader who simply instructs and one who inspires. You inspire in everything that you do." And Meg, as I said, I want to thank you for your service, and thank you for all that you're doing in the first responder mental health space now. So Meg Jarvis, thank you so much.
Appreciate you, Adam. Thank you.
Thanks, legend. And we'll catch up when I come back over to Perth. So I look forward to catching up with you.
Let's do that.
Yeah, awesome. Cheers, legend.
See ya.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to True Blue Conversations with your host, Adam Bloom. Real talk with those that pledge to keep us safe with grit, sacrifice, and determination. See you next time.